Hi everyone!
Hey!
Welcome to our live Twitch stream, and this is the first episode of Chatter Overflow, where we're going to be joining you every few weeks to talk about cybersecurity, and we're aiming this series particularly at students who are interested in cybersecurity, but it's really open up to anyone, particularly if you're interested in a cybersecurity career, if you're new to a cybersecurity career, if you want to find out more about what it's like to work in cybersecurity. We're going to be joined by guests in future episodes, but for today it's just us.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
So we should probably say who we are.
Yeah, so I don't know if we need to give people a little bit of time to log in, because we are about a minute early, I believe.
No, I think we're bang on time.
Minute late, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do a quick introduction then. So who are you?
Hi everyone. I'm Dr Jessica Barker, you can call me Jess. I am one of the co-CEOs of Cygenta, together with this one. And I work on the human side of cybersecurity, so what I work on, what I'm really interested in is awareness, behaviour and culture when it comes to cybersecurity.
And I'm FC, I'm also the co-founder and co-CEO of Cygenta. I'm also the head of ethical hacking, which is the techie side of Cygenta. So we do all the penetration testing and ethical hacking. So yeah, and then also on this call we have Madeline, who's Mads Howard. She's our moderator today. She's going to be making sure everyone's staying in line, chucking them out if they're not, and she'll be curating the list of questions that hopefully you guys have for us.
And I think Madeline can say hello in chat unless we need to do something. Yes, there she is. Mads, the mod, and she's going to be doing a great job. A lot of you, if you're in Gloucestershire and you're engaged in the Cyber First, Cyber Schools Hub stuff, then you'll know Madeline, and hopefully you might have seen us and met us at some of the stuff as well. So hopefully you're familiar with us, but if not, it's great to have you joining us and getting to know us now.
Yeah.
So, if you have any questions at all about cybersecurity, about working in cybersecurity, about the industry, about what your plans are, then put them in the chat and Madeline will help to get them through to us and we'll do our best to answer them. We're going to be here for half an hour, so until 2 o'clock, and we'll be very happy to take questions then. And if we don't get through all of them, then we'll be back in a few weeks and we will take them then.
Yeah.
So
whilst you give all your questions to Madeline, and she curates them all into a sensible list, why don't we talk about us a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, and how we got into the industry, what our jobs are, etc.
Yeah.
So do you want to go first or shall I?
You go first.
I'll go first then. Okay, so I'm a lot older than I seem, even though some of you probably think I'm quite old.
Yeah, I reckon they think you're quite
So I grew up before the industry was an industry. I was very fortunate to be around computers from a very young age, before the World Wide Web was even invented. So I didn't really so much get into the industry kind of grew around what I was doing as a hobby anyway. So that's really how I got into it, and it's a lot different for most people now. I mean, you have to go to university and do courses.
You don't have to.
You don't have to.
You don't have to.
You don't have to do that.
But you can.
But
which wasn't an option.
Yeah, it wasn't even a thing then. Yeah, like I couldn't even get to university, let alone do a course in cybersecurity. So my path into infosec was probably very different to a lot of people's experiences and definitely how they are now.
So when you say kind of, obviously as you were growing up and being with computers and stuff, and the industry kind of grew at the same time, like what was your first job? How did that evolve?
So I originally went to study science. I wanted to be a physicist, so I went through college doing that, but I got a very interesting job doing looking after people's computers, basically systems administrator. That was my official job role, and it was basically babysitting computers to make sure they didn't fall over because they were very unstable back then, and making sure everything was working correctly, and then looking at making sure they weren't able to be hacked, and because I had a lot of experience of doing that, it was obviously easy for me to do that from a defence side. So in defending against all that, then basically you learn the ways to get in. So that was like my first real inkling into ethical hacking was that side of it.
So you say you learned the ways to get in, you mean you learned how people were attacking?
Exactly. So back then there weren't a lot of laws around this sort of stuff because no one really knew what it was. So you weren't breaking the law by like messing around with computers. Whereas nowadays, if you open up a piece of software, it's like you're not allowed to take it apart to see how it works. Whereas back then, everything was free. A lot of systems didn't even have passwords on them. It wasn't a thing. So yeah, it's a very different time. So figuring out how computers worked and how you got into them was much different to what it is nowadays.
And we'll come on to me in a minute, but
I was going to say this feels like a...
I know, I've now gone into like TV presenter mode.
Jeremy Paxman.
Here for a chat. We've not even got to the tricky questions yet. So that's kind of how you got into ethical hacking on the computer side, but then there's of course the like physical security side and the breaking in physically.
Yeah, so my speciality is not just the ethical hacking side, but it's physically breaking into buildings. So I get to rob a lot of banks in my career, which is very unusual. It's not something they tell you at careers advice at school. And so how that happened is I was doing a lot of penetration testings for companies, and when I would go in on site to their companies, I would spot security flaws and be like, well, they need to know about this. So I would write them down on a small piece of paper, and then that piece of paper got bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually one of the clients was like, do you know what, this is really handy for us to know. Can you look at this particular part over on our other company site? And so that turned into a bit of a kind of almost a report. It became a little bit more official, and then it's like, okay, can you do this for other companies as well? So that's really how I got into the physical side.
So a good example of how your career can kind of grow and you don't see it coming, and that was really similar for me. Do you see the way I seamlessly
So how did you get into the industry then?
I would never have thought that I would be working in cybersecurity or in anything kind of technical to do with computers. When I was growing up, the internet came along when I was like a teenager. And my brother was really into it, so he kind of introduced me to the internet, and we were lucky enough, and particularly as my brother was so keen on it, I think we had it at home before we had it at school, so that gives an idea of how old I am. So I would never have thought I'd work into it at all, and then I did some electronics kind of projects at school, but I didn't see that as a career. So I did like sociology, history, English for my A-levels. I went on to university, did sociology and politics. I then worked in urban regeneration for a few years, and I enjoyed it, but I knew it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And a chance came up to do a PhD. And there was sponsorship attached, there was money attached, and it paid slightly more than the job I had at the time. So I was like, great, like why would I not want to do that? So I did a PhD, and that was looking at the growth of the internet and how that has influenced sort of society and particularly like cities and how people work and live. So not at all about security, but starting to get into kind of the relationship between people and security and society and tech. Finished my PhD, and then I was approached by a cybersecurity company who wanted someone who could look in a different perspective at security, and they got in touch with me. And I was like, what's this cybersecurity stuff? So I sort of started to look into it. I thought, wow, this is really interesting, this is really different, I'll have a go. And now here we are, nearly 10 years later, and I love it, and I wouldn't do anything else.
Yeah. So I cover quite technical stuff. What is it that you do day to day for Cygenta?
Are you asking because you don't know?
No. Other than all the managerial running a company stuff.
Yeah, no. What I really do is help organisations with their awareness, behaviour, and culture around cybersecurity. So what that actually means on a day-to-day basis is helping organisations by going to people in the company and asking them for their impressions on security, what they understand about it, what they don't, where they're following policy, where they're not to tell them off, but to find out where the policy isn't working, where security is a blocker, what security can do, to kind of be more accessible. So a lot of my work is kind of bringing together the security with the other people in the business so that people can still do their job, but in a more secure way. And so then lots of that as well is about communicating, like, what is cybersecurity? Why does it matter to people? How can they be more secure? How can they understand risk? So lots and lots of talking to people, which is great because I love that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got a few questions.
Yeah,
I think.
so we were going to say a thing about before getting into questions, but there's actually one question that seamlessly covers what we were going to talk about in
You
this
are
section.
all so wonderful.
It's amazing.
Asking
Thank
these
you.
questions and
So,
lining us up
and
well.
it's this one. So this is why we keep looking down here, is because we've got the questions being moderated by Madeline coming in here. So I think this is where we start with.
So we've had a question. If someone doesn't want to go to university, are you familiar with any companies that provide apprenticeships in cybersecurity? And this is a teacher asking on behalf of the students, which is great.
Do we know of any?
You know what?
So we are actually announcing that we are officially looking for an apprentice to join Cygenta. We don't want to make this whole stream today about that apprenticeship because there's plenty of other questions that we need to go through. So we are looking for someone that is potentially, really interested in open source intelligence and ideally speaks foreign languages.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're very open to, at Cygenta, we all kind of come from different backgrounds, so we're very open to talking to people with all sorts of backgrounds and interests and stuff in cybersecurity. We ideally are looking for someone who has a little bit of a mix of some technical skills and some kind of human skills, interests. And if you are interested, if you want to know more, if you think that could be you, then you can email us info@cygenta.co.uk and Madeline will put that in the chat so you know where to get in touch, and we'll be very happy to talk to you and tell you more.
Yeah. Just as an aside, we are a security company, so if you send us anything like your CV in a PDF, we will not open it. Yeah. So make sure all of the relevant information is in the email as plain text. Otherwise, it won't get seen.
Top tip.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of companies that do apprenticeships. It's certainly not just us. It's a brilliant route to go down. You absolutely don't have to go to university to work in this industry, as people like FC show. If you want to go to university, you can, as hopefully people like me show. Whatever's the right path for you.
Yeah, okay, so take another question then. Seems that covered everything perfectly well.
Yeah, thanks to the person for that question. So we've got a question that you can answer, I think.
What are the technical skills I recommend for learning a career in cybersecurity? I guess it really, cybersecurity is vast, right? It's a very large breadth of things that you can do, and it really depends on what you're focused on. So whether or not it's like malware analysis or forensics investigations or penetration testing or development work, because you need security in development as well. So it's not just breaking, it's about creating stuff. So it's very hard for me to say, go and focus on this thing, but I would suggest for all of those, you probably at least need some knowledge of Python. Python's it crosses across those quite well, I think. But it's being able to ingest data really quickly. For any professional in almost any career, especially in computers, all you have to be good at is Googling stuff before the client understands what you're doing. So just being one page ahead of everything always makes you seem like the professional. That's my top tip, is be good at Googling.
That's the top technical tip. But I think it taps into something that is really important in working in security or advancing your understanding of it, which is when you read something, hear something, see something, and you don't understand it, if there's terms there you don't understand, then going away and looking at those, Googling them.
Yeah.
You might not be able to do it at the time, you know, make a little list. And that's a really good way of actually finding what it is that is right for you in the industry, because you might see someone referring to SQL injection, or you might see someone talking about social engineering or open source intelligence, which we referred to before. You might not know what it is. If you go away and look at it, it might take you down a bit of a rabbit hole where you actually discover stuff that you really like, and you think, actually that's really interesting to me, or that's not so interesting to me, so I'm not going to go further down that path. I'm going to go and look at something else. Cybersecurity is so broad, there's always other stuff to look at.
And there's so much depth to it. That's basically what I was saying, but you just said it a lot more eloquently than I did. It's interesting. You can look at some things, but honestly, even now, after like 25, 30 years in computers, there's still terms that I have to Google every day and figure out how things work. I talk about programming. You don't have to be a strong programmer to do it. I will almost certainly look up every single line of code that I need to write. We released a tool yesterday that I wrote from scratch, but every single bit of it was like, how do I do this? How do I print to the screen? And I'm terrible at forgetting everything. So being able to Google stuff for me is just the best thing.
And there's loads of resources in cybersecurity. So a great place to look if you want to learn more, you know, whether it's technical or something else, take a look at Cybrary. And I just sort of sent that through to Mads so she can add it to the chat, because with Cybrary there's loads of resources and a lot of free content, so that, as well as YouTube and just Googling stuff, loads of resources out there where you can learn more.
There's always learning. It doesn't stop. I spend probably most of my free time learning stuff. So anyway, that was one question.
So another question we've got is, I have previously recommended the book Nudge. If you're not familiar with it, it's a really interesting book around why we all act the way we do, and particularly why we might do things that might seem irrational, like, for example, giving away information, when we've received a spear phishing email that we might look back on and think, oh, I should have realised I was being scammed. But actually a lot of it is in the way that our brains work, the way that we operate as humans, and the book Nudge really helps to explain that. And the question is whether there's any other books that the two of us recommend. And the person asking the question said they don't need to be about hacking or about computers. So I am going to recommend a book that I think is helpful for people in cybersecurity, but is also good in general, especially with everything that's going on at the minute, where times may seem difficult. There's a book called The Guide to the Good Life, and it talks about Stoicism, which is basically, Stoicism is an old discipline, kind of philosophical discipline that talks about how to leave negative things and focus on positive things, and even when there's challenging things happen, how to have this kind of resilience where it's easier to cope with some of the hard things that happen in life. So Stoicism, I think, is really helpful, because when you're working in security,
it can be stressful.
It can be stressful, and sometimes you see bad things happening. But I think Stoicism is just really nice as an approach to life, and The Guide to the Good Life is an easy to access. It's not like written like old philosophy. It's very easy to access and interesting.
It really has changed our lives, I think, actually. So my book recommendation is probably going to be The Go-Giver by Bob Berg and the other chap whose name I can never remember. There's two of them that wrote it. The Go-Giver is really at the core of what Cygenta does and believes, and it's about giving back to everyone, to just giving everything you can, in the hope that it makes everyone's lives a bit better. And that's partly what this is really about, is taking some of our time and our resources to reach out to people and say, how can we help you? So The Go-Giver by Bob Berg and the other chap is my recommendation. But also read any books, read as much books as you can, and don't feel like you have to finish every book.
And also, you don't always have to read them. Like, you can access books in so many different ways now, like audio books and stuff. Someone has said, is the co-author John Mann? I think it actually is.
Possibly.
Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you for
good googling.
Yes. Another question.
Right. Let's go for another one. This one.
So yeah, you were just talking about actually doing Chatter Overflow, and that's kind of part of our outreach work. And the person asking the question has very kindly said it's well known and respected. Thanks. How do you make it more about InfoSec as a broad church rather than just hacking, which is a romantic ideal? Well, cybersecurity, I guess for me, I've always seen it as being very broad, because I'm not a hacker by background. I came in working on the sort of the human side of stuff when it was much more niche than I think it is now. Luckily now we're at a point where the human side is recognised as being a core part of cybersecurity. So I guess for me it feels kind of easy to make it be seen as a broad church, because that's my day to day. One thing I have found generally works quite well is a talk I give called What Taylor Swift Can Teach Us About Cybersecurity, and some of you on the stream might have seen it, because I've done it a few places around speaking at kind of schools and universities and stuff. And the idea behind that talk is to show that cybersecurity is relevant to absolutely every industry, pretty much every area of life now, because we're all dealing with information. So whether it's the fashion industry, whether it's pop stars and music like Taylor Swift, whether it's footballers, actors, the film industry, journalism, whoever it is, whatever you're doing, information in one form or another is really important. So if you're Taylor Swift, you don't want your next song to be leaked. So there's loads of stuff that Taylor Swift or her team, I don't know, maybe it is her, do to protect that asset. So that I think is quite good, and it also touches on the fact that cybersecurity, of course it is about hacking, of course it's about the technical side, but it's also about information in its broadest sense, and it's about who we talk to, how we talk to people, it's about the technology we use, it's about how that technology is created, how it's designed, how it's abused, how it's destroyed. Everything to do with technology and information really is also about cybersecurity.
Yeah. That was well answered.
Thanks, you sound so shocked.
I've got nothing to add, that was brilliant. Okay, next question then.
So,
this one? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Do you know if the versatility of a BSc in computer science would allow one to extend to cybersecurity if they want to change career path?
Great question.
I would say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any formal learning that you have will always help you in any industry that you go into. Cybersecurity is not just about knowing the technical part of it. It's being able to reach into other areas of your life and experiences and understanding how it fits into that realm. So that's why I said earlier, like, read everything you can, because you'll read something or you'll watch a YouTube video or you'll speak about something somewhere with someone that will suddenly one day just go, that's what I need here. That's some experience I can draw on and put in here. So something like that, the BSc in computer science, is definitely going to help you.
Yeah, I think it's going to create a great foundation where you obviously, will understand a lot about computers, about how they work. That absolutely is fundamental to cybersecurity. And FC is completely right that whatever you learn really in life, whether you go into cybersecurity or not, usually will become relevant in one way or another. And it's also about kind of taking your path and drawing on it in a way that makes the most of your experiences. So I've never studied computer science or cybersecurity, nor have you. Yeah. I studied sociology, politics, and then did civic design for my PhD. But there's strands throughout those that I draw on now in my work, and that wouldn't have made sense to me when I started out working in cybersecurity, it's as it builds up and I start to realise, like, oh yeah, that thing I learned in sociology more years ago than I can quite work out right now is actually really relevant to this thing that's happening now. Or it all goes into making you the unique person that you are, that you can then offer to the work that you do.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes left.
Got 5 minutes left,
Yeah,
so I think
we've kind of answered that one already.
we have answered that one a little bit. Someone asking, if you're looking for a cybersecurity job, how do you find a job if you have a degree in something other than cybersecurity? So kind of practical stuff that you can do is get along to, well, now it will be virtual meetups.
Yeah, virtual meetups.
Cybersecurity is all about, there's a lot about sharing information, there's a lot about working together, there's a lot of the community that really wants to support and help one another. So actually there's usually a lot of meetups happening in the real world, but a lot of that's moving to virtual. So engage with that stuff, meet the people that you can, network. You know, if you feel comfortable being and you're able to, then share on social media like your interests in cybersecurity, what you're learning. Think about setting up a blog. Sometimes people think they have to be like an expert before they share what they know or what they're learning, and that's not true at all. Sharing actually a journey of learning can be really helpful for the people that are always going to be coming up behind, wanting to learn and follow in your footsteps. So that would be my advice. And if you want to kind of read more, Madeline actually did a really great blog post on getting into cybersecurity, and she kind of talked about different tips, different bits of advice, links to different resources. So that's on our blog, and I'm sure Madeline can share a link. Have a look, and hopefully that might give you some more ideas.
Yeah, I think it's really important, like what Jess said, is getting connections with people. Knowing people more than the stuff you know is really important. As you can probably see from all of the politicians that are trying to run the country, none of them got there with academic careers. They got there because they knew people.
There's maybe a few.
There's maybe a few, but who you know is way more important. And making those connections. Always try and be the dumbest person in the room. That's my philosophy. Because if everyone around you is smarter than you, you can learn something from them.
And to be honest, whatever room you're in, whoever you're talking to, there's always stuff to learn.
Yeah.
So having that attitude of wanting to learn, of wanting to support people, of like following the kind of the go-giver type approach, and kind of speaking to people and sharing what you're interested in, they're really good ways of actually sort of moving forward in whatever area of life you want to move forward in.
Yeah. So one very quick final
question.
Do we play tabletop games? Yes, we do. We love a bit of Dungeons and Dragons, as Death Pirates just said. He's one of us as well. He works with Cygenta. We love a bit of Dungeons and Dragons. Zombicide is possibly our favourite tabletop game.
Yeah.
Which we haven't played for a while because things have been a bit hectic. But yes, we do. We're geeky and nerdy, and we love it.
Yeah.
So I think we should wrap this up. So
Sons of Anarchy. So just reminded us, haven't played that for ages. Yeah. That's great.
So I think Mad's just going to chuck in a load of links that we haven't spoken about into the chat so that everyone can have them.
And I just want to end with a couple of pieces of advice of kind of other resources or other things you might be interested to look at. Obviously a lot of you will be familiar with Cyber First. It's a great opportunity to go on to Cyber TV on the website and see loads of great vlogs and stuff from other people. On Thursday, I'm moderating a panel of Cyber First students as part of the National Policing series of webinars. So you can sign up to that and join us on Thursday. I think it's about this time of day on Thursday. So that should be really good. And then other tips and places to go for resources Madeline's going to share. There's lots of things happening with Cyber First, with Teen Tech, and with other initiatives out there.
So hopefully everyone enjoyed that. Hopefully everyone will come back for the next one in the series where we're going to hopefully have a guest.
We are going to have a guest, and that guest, we can tell you, is a Deputy Director of the NCSC.
Yes.
So we're really excited about them joining us and you all virtually in a few weeks. And keep an eye, here and on Twitter, and we'll be sharing more details.
Yeah, so don't forget to follow us on Twitch, because then you'll know when we go live.
Yeah.
Also follow us on Twitter, which is where we're the most active.
Yeah.
And go and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, and we're on LinkedIn and we're on Facebook as well. We're trying to get a bit more active on Facebook, promise. Yeah.
All right, well,
Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll say goodbye.
And thanks, Madeline. Great mods.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.